Hi, I'm Kelmendi from University of Pristina, Department of Psychology. I would like to express my thankfulness to Dr. Falou for this opportunity and her engagement and effort on contributing to the diversity in science. On the other hand, I'm very happy to be part of this micro convention, and I'm looking forward to hear your presentation as well. Today I will present you findings from a recent study that we have done in Kosovo in regard to school victimization and its relatedness with sociodemographic factors. However, before I will begin, I would like to introduce with some specific characteristics related to Kosovo. Kosovo is the newest country in Europe which came out of the war in 1999 and declared its independence in 2008. It has a population at about 2 million, mostly Albanians. It has a very young population, around 30% are under 15 years old, and it has approximately the same level, the equal distribution of men and women. However, Kosovo, similar to other post-conflict societies, experienced many social changes and socioeconomic difficulties that impacted overall society and youth particularly. Unfortunately, as we see from the report on Kosovo Youth Strategy, we see that low socioeconomic conditions seem to represent a major risk factor for engagement of youth in criminal behavior. Besides, Haidari in 2015 shows increase in juvenile criminality for around 7%. On the other hand, Kosovo Country Crime Report shows very high rates of crimes in Kosovo, while Kosovo's Security Barometer considers that 50% of the responders consider school violence as a threat to security. On the other hand, Kosovo, since the end of the war in 1999, mainly has been focused in creating infrastructure and developing human resources in her educational system, while the efforts for quality in education, health, and working condition was lacking. This resulted in very poor results in many international evaluation that Kosovo students took. For example, they were listed as a third from the bottom of the list. Unfortunately, what we see from the research is that school violence increases the risk for future poverty and underdevelopment, and as such challenges the fulfillment of WHO Millennium Developmental Goals. In this regard, we as a Department of Psychology, coming from public university, we have considered that we have an obligation to understand the issue of school violence and provide and design a study which could contribute to better prevention and intervention. Before doing so, we did a meta-analytic review, reviewing all the existing evidence and see how our study could improve the existing evidence. As we see from this meta-analytic paper, we see that many studies has been conducted in Kosovo, measured different types of violence. We have many different prevalence rates and many different prevalence rates of types of victimization. All these studies use different methodologies, different operationalization, and there is a lack of strictly defined methodology which could be used for better prevention. On the other hand, what we see from this review is that Kosovo does not differ from other countries in region, like Albania, Macedonia, Serbia, and Montenegro, as it seems the Balkan territory has, and the work that has been done in this area of the world impacted the way how people deal with conflict in everyday life. However, research shows that school violence is common not only in these cultures but in other cultures. For example, the latest multi-country study conducted on school victimization shows that among 37 nations shows that the prevalence rates are around 28% on average, with minimum of 10% and 70% in Hungary. Also, what we see from the research is that school violence has a huge consequences in terms of mental, physical, and well-being, but also has an impact on academic achievement. In this regard, we have considered that there is a need for developing multi-level study which will be focused on understanding different factors that are associated with school victimization. For this purpose, we used nested ecological model as a theoretical framework which lead our study. And what we see from Benavishti and Astor, we see that they consider school violence as a product of many factors situated at different levels of social ecology, including individual, school-related factors, family-related factors, neighborhood, and culture. And according to them, understanding the context of violence is key to prevention and intervention. As we see, in fact, we consider that this study has two importance, has educational importance and scientific importance. Scientific importance is in using the theoretical framework in non-previously studied context, and as such understanding the similarities and differences which would contribute to diversity in science. On the other hand, in terms of educational importance, it will provide us for the first time in local level data on school victimization with a strictly defined methodology. It will contribute to the better research in Kosovo, and it will provide us with empirical based prevention and intervention programs. As I said, this presentation is based on a larger national study. For the purpose of the presentation, we will present only school prevalence rates of victimization among 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th graders in a nationally representative sample, and its association with individual, family, and socioeconomic factors. In total, around 12,000 students from 12 municipalities were included in the sample. The sample was designed in a such way to be representative of all graders from 6th to the 9th grade, and therefore we used two-stage stratified cluster sampling that had in a way two strata, urban, rural, and then grades, and four strata of grades, and we decided to take at least two classes from the all grades. All pupils were selected randomly from each grade, and as you will see, the distribution of the gender was approximately the same. The average age was 14 years old. In terms of school achievements, they were very good students, 5 in a scale from 1 to 5, so they were really 4. They were very good students. In terms of perception about family status, most of them considered that their financial family status is approximately the same as others, and most of the children had parents with secondary education, while in terms of employment status, 85% of children reported that their father parent works, while only 15% reported that their mother works. As we said, we provided with a letter of explanation for the study, and parental consent was received for all students that were included in the sample. We used the measure of victimization, which has been developed by Benebishti and Astor, which asked for physical, psychological, sexual harassment, school violence with weapons, and demographics. As you will see, all the measures have very good coefficients of reliability, and also in terms of demographics that we use were age, gender, parental educational level, parental employment level, school success, and perception of family financial status. In terms of analysis, we have used only prevalence rate. We will present you only prevalence rates of school victimization, Spearman rank correlation for association of type of violence, and logistic aggression, logistic regression in order to understand school victimization and its association with sociodemographic factors. As we can see from this slide, we can see that the most prevalent form of violence in terms of school was psychological and minor physical victimization. You will notice probably different nouns in terms of a different categorization of types of violence, but this happened this way because before creating the scale, we did exploratory factor analysis of the scale and then confirmatory factor analysis of the scale, and the items for the Kosovo context loaded differently in comparison to original model, and this model show a better fit. Therefore, we decided to use this way of presentation of types of victimization. So psychological and minor physical victimization were loaded in one factor, as we can see, seem to be the most prevalent form of victimization, while the least prevalent form of victimization seems to be sexual violence. If you look in terms of grades, we can see in a 6th and 7th grade, the minor forms of school victimization seem to be more prevalent in comparison to more severe forms, while it's interesting to see that in 8th grade and 9th grader we have higher rates of school victimization with weapons, while other types of victimization approximately stay the same. Statistically significant differences across the grades and types of victimization were noticed. If we look in terms of gender, we can see that males reported significantly higher rates of school victimization in comparison to females for all types of violence. And this is, of course, interesting, but this is something that we can discuss later. If we look in terms of academic success, we can also see statistically significant differences on victimization by school success, saying that despite the performance in school, children are victimized by different forms of victimization. It's interesting to see that those with a poor result reported highest rates of minor. In general, there were statistically significant differences. If we look in terms of mean ranks of different types of victimization and parental education, what we can see is that in mothers, when children coming from families where mothers and fathers has higher rates of education, like university degree, reported higher rates of victimization, and this was the same for all type of violence. One of the explanation is that maybe they are more aware about victimization, but this is something that needs to be explored further. If we look in terms of employment status, it's interesting that in a case when father is employed, children coming from the families where father is employed show significantly higher rates of minor forms of victimization and sexual victimization, while on the cases where children coming from the families where mother was employed, they reported higher rates of victimization for each type of violence. This is also interesting finding, especially when considering the context in which we live. Probably this is related to the fact that mother figure is the only one that is concerned about the child rearing and so on, and her absence in the family increases the rates of victimization. If we look in terms of Spearman rank correlation, we see that all types of victimization show moderate to high rates of correlation between each other. And finally, what we did is that we did a logistic regression analysis in order to see how different factors are associated with victimization, each type of victimization. It's interesting to see that being female decreases the rates of being victim. In terms of age, what we see that increasing the age increase the rates for physical and minor physical victimization, while decreases the rates for sexual victimization. Increasing the grades increasing the class increases the odds for being victim for any type of victimization. On the other hand, if we look in terms of educational level of parents, as it seems, having a father with university degree increases the rates for being victim of minor forms of violence and sexual victimization. But this is not the case for the educational level of mother, where we see that only in when mother has a university degree, this raises the odds for being sexually victimized. On the other hand, as we noted, having a mother that is employed increases the odds for experiencing any type of victimization. And lastly, for the perception of socioeconomic status seem to be associated with severe physical victimization and sexual victimization and school victimization with weapons. In overall, what we see from these findings is that gender male was significantly associated with all types of victimization. Grade and age has mixed results. Severe physical victimization rates of violence are remained approximately the same. Psychological and minor victimization showed a decreasing trend, while sexual victimization and victimization with weapons showed increasing trend. Academic success showed mixed findings, where we see that both high and poor performance students experience victimization. If we look in terms of family level factors, educational level of parents showed higher rates of victimization in comparison to others. This is also related to increased awareness and more talking about victimizations. Employment status of parents, especially employment status of mothers, seem to be associated with victimization. And the perception of socioeconomic status as better in comparison to others increases the odds for victimization in contrast to many other studies. Final remarks would be that school victimization is very high regardless of gender, age, grade, academic performance, parental education, and socioeconomic status. And therefore, we need a more inclusive and broad prevention strategies. For example, promotion of resilience portfolio model, which considers violence, which considers that is best to work on strengthening the capacity of individuals to deal with adversity, could be maybe a good model on developing the strength for experiencing the victimization. And finally, intervention programs should tackle high graders, students, female, and important promoting the father's figure in child rearing. Thank you.